welcome to No Question About That. This is United In-Car Finance Pod with Jamie Subprime Goals, or the Director's Inbox. You're expanding your empire, as we talked about last time. How's it going, Jamie?
Yeah, all good. Another fun day in football finance / Man United finance world.
Yeah.
Plenty of stuff to get stuck into, but no, it's all good. Kind of finalising the run up to Christmas, trying to get a few things finished, and then push quite a lot of stuff into the new year, so don't have to think about it.
Well, United had a big win on the pitch this week against Wolves. Truly one of the crappiest teams I've ever seen in the Premier League. But you've got to play what's in front of you. How are United doing off the pitch financially? That's what we'll discuss today. So Q1 results out. So that's July, August and September. And we'll get into the headlines. A little bit of context, though. This quarter is always a bit weird because it covers some of the transfer market. And so when we look at wages, which are, I think, one of the headline figures here, it includes some players that aren't actually at the club anymore. You have to try and work out how many weeks were they there again? How many weeks? Anyway, it kind of factors into our wages, and which have come down again. But let's go to the top lines. Revenue, 140 million. It's only a slight loss year over year, which may be a surprise to some people because obviously last year we had Europa League games to play. This quarter, a year on, no Europa League games. But how have United kept up with that? And what's going on with the total revenue?
Yeah, so there's a few moving parts here. We can start on the match day revenue, which, as you say, was broadly flat year over year. I think the key thing here is, yes, no Europa League, but that only accounted for one extra game. And I think there was an EFL Cup game. So really, in this specific period, there was only 2 extra games. And the likelihood is neither of those games would have been huge revenue generators for the club, just because they wouldn't have been sold out. And therefore, why is it flat? Well, there's a little bit of that offset by the higher ticket prices. So predominantly the season tickets, but then also the hospitality initiatives. So that involved the relocation of some fans that sat near the director's box and the dugout areas. Those kind of higher price tickets are now kind of coming through. And really, those are the dynamics at play. So, look, financially, that, is a good result for the club. Clearly, that comes with some negatives in terms of impact on fans, which is continuing to be felt both in terms of prices, when matches are, et cetera, et cetera. I would expect that to potentially fall a little bit more pronounced in subsequent quarters, because that's when you'll really start to see the impact of fewer games coming through.
Yeah. And it all rolls down to a slight increase in EBITDA and a slight increase in pre-tax losses. It's much of a muchness, honestly. It's a few million here or there. I don't think it's really a headline anywhere. Probably the big thing to talk about, though, I mean, if you look across the main, as you said, matchday commercial and broadcast, it's pretty flat year over year, adjusted a little bit for one game here or there, and ticket price increases, as you say, rolls into a slight increase in EBITDA gains, slight pre-tax loss. The big headline is debt, though. I think the main sort of bond debt is about even. It's 480-something million pounds if you convert it. The revolving credit facility, though, United are very close to the top of that. I mean, I think there's something like 80 million left on that. 350 million is the total credit facility. 270 odd or something like that is what United are at. Means if you take cash in hand, which is not much, total debt is something around 740, top end of 740 million. Now, kind of eye-watering, Jamie. Don't know about you, but I'd worry if I had 750 million pounds worth of debt.
Yeah, look, I think the headline is scary. I would say it's not unexpected, right? Like,
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah.
we knew the last set of results that United had dipped into the expanded credit facility by the tune of about 105 million, and that's basically accounting for the increase in overall debt. It's all coming through short-term debt. So that to me is not a surprise. Is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? Well, look, I think it's a reflection of where the finances are, and what we've consistently said is there are underlying improvements being made, but we're not out of the woods yet, and there is a long way to go. So without further sponsorships, without fresh equity, which won't happen because of how the deal's structured, all of the improvements in United's finances, at least in the short term, so the next 18 months, kind of have to come from within the club themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, we talked about kind of on the wages front, that's where that piece is so critical. So yeah, look, it's a scary number. It's not unsurprising, but in the context of the deal between Ineos and the Glazers, I can totally understand why debt is as it is.
Yeah, absolutely. There's not a lot United can do about it in this kind of current structure. We're going to have to see some equity changes to make some changes there, but it's getting to the point where it looks big even for someone like Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Of course, net debt comes off the overall enterprise value anyway, so it's taken into account if there is a change of ownership down the line. So I guess that's much of a muchness, but it is a brutal number. And given that there will be, as it stands, no additional cash injection, it does mean United don't have a lot of flexibility, right? So they've cut as much as they can. The player wages, I mean, they're down at a really low level. We're probably spending just a bit above Villa, Newcastle and Spurs, right? We definitely spend less than City, Liverpool and Chelsea and Arsenal now on our player wage budget. They've reduced the non-player wage budget, as we've talked about previously. Like, staff went down from 1,150 to at least sub 900, but it's probably much more than that. I don't think it was clear in these results exactly how many staff United have now. I don't know whether you saw it and I missed it.
No, it's not out yet. I mean, look, the headline cuts probably take it to about 750, but United have been rehiring a little bit, kind of, in terms of to change, in line with the kind of change structure. Yeah. So I don't know, maybe kind of around the 800 mark is probably where I expect it to level out to, maybe a touch above that, something along those lines.
Yeah, and compared to, one normal human earns 100th of what a player does or something like that. So it rips out like a certain amount of cost. I think we estimated before, around about the 50 million a year. That's significant, but it's almost as if it's the club right-sizing itself for not being in European football. And if we want to progress, European football is really what we need. Obviously, ideally, the Champions League. Europa League's not bad. Conference League, dearie me. It's a sort of football finance question, but you'd be worried for United if we were in Conference League. It depends on each individual contract whether they get the European bonuses. I assume that if they have written it into most contracts that they won't get European bonuses in the Conference League, but United wouldn't make much out of the TV pool at all. Some out of match day, but you'd not expect many of those games to sell out, and you need a bigger squad. So it's not a great position to be in if United finish 7th this year, which is not unrealistic.
Yeah, look, I think on the contracts, I think they would probably structure it so that there was a bonus for qualifying for the Champions League in terms of new players, rather than kind of like a negative scenario if your wages get cut if you're in the Conference League.
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
I think, look, there's a big debate about youth at the moment at United. I think if United were in the Conference League, what would I be doing? I'd be using that as a tournament to blood the youth. I'd also fancy going to some of those stadiums. I actually just received a book about the top 100, what's it called? Europeans' Greatest Football Grounds, which is the top 100. to go in Europe, some off the beaten track, and I think the Conference League would touch on many of those. But yeah, look, if that was an eventuality, I would say blood the youth in that competition, because ultimately it's going to be a cost to you. If you can then run, the rest of the fixtures using your normal first team squad, I think that's fine.
Doable, yeah. All right. So where does this leave United at the moment? I mean, it's Q1, right? As I said, a bit lumpy. We'll get a better idea, I think, in Q2, honestly, of where the United's, at least on the wage budget. I'd imagine given all the players that left and the timing of when they left, quite late in the transfer window, we're probably a little bit under where we were last year in terms of player wages, because the players that came in were on reasonable wages.
We're definitely under. On my estimates, look, I think if we talk about the exit rate, i.e., if you smooth out the impact of when players got sold and when players got bought, I think the underlying wage bill on a quarterly basis is and this is total wages, is just under 70 million. So I reckon it's about 5. I reckon it's about 5 million lower than what it currently is.
Yeah.
I think that's fine. There is arguably, a bit more savings to be made, through the squad. And at the very least, we'll see that at the end of the year. That does give capacity to probably buy, I don't know, 2 £50 million players, maybe, or, one 75 million pound player, one 25 million pound player, which, depending on what they do with midfield, that might be the way they want to cut it. So look, yes, they've cut the wage bill, but I don't get scared by that, because the reality is where United were finishing based on their wage bill, it didn't justify it.
Yeah.
And
sure. Yeah.
I think you have to take in the context of, this is kind of like a special situation. It's quite a risky, if you want to really reset things, and, this is something that does irk me a little bit about the narrative sometimes, is that, over the summer, everyone seemed on board with this whole rhetoric of, okay, we've got to burn everything to the ground and rebuild from scratch. But then, this is what that looks like.
Yeah.
And so you have to take the pain with it.
Yes, I think if we talk about strategy, you can see the path. What I would flag as the major risk is United effectively saying they have to beat the market. And that is certainly something we haven't done over the last decade. Are the new guys smarter? We'll see. They're putting the structures in place to make better decisions, I think. And you see that both in terms of how they've restructured departments, so new heads of everything. A lot of the staff that had been fired have been partially replaced in different areas of the club. So the data team has been built out. We know the recruitment team has changed significantly, so they lost nearly half their scouts, concentrating on high tier areas, and then perhaps a little bit through Vival's network on areas that they had not focused on before, South America. So there's a change in strategy. You can see that, and you hope that brings better decisions. But if the biggest factor in success, depending on who you believe in their research, is the wage bill, then United should not finish higher than about fourth, right? So you have to beat the market at some point. And then I guess you're saying, if you look at Arsenal's trajectory in terms of their finances, they were not a high-paying club 5 years ago. Now they are. And so United are going back to that to rebuild from there. And they just have to make 80% decisions correct, basically. And that's outside of all the finance and the debt and stuff like that. So strategically, it's a tough position, but they kind of have to do it. And then, in terms of spending, it's when, right? So they have not a lot of capacity right now. They'll have more in the summer. The outgoings will be interesting, because who are the high-value tickets to be sold left in the squad? That just aren't really any. We'll talk about one prominent one in a little bit, and that's the thing that will give them capacity. So you can imagine both in January and summer there'll be a lot of clamour to spend a lot of money, where that spending can come from, like what cash United have on hand to actually spend, is kind of interesting, even when they've done all this restructuring.
Yeah, and like, look, on that point about beating the market, look, football is a low-scoring game, and therefore there is a higher probability of failure as a result of that, i.e. like the ability for a team that's not played as well as you to beat you is higher in football than pretty much most sports, right? So whilst you can have the right strategy in place, bad luck does play a big role in football where it might not in others, like say a basketball. However, are we set up or setting ourselves up in such a way to be able to beat the market or be more likely to beat the market? Yes. And I think that's almost as good as you can do. Like, look, if we ended up being like Arsenal in terms of their trajectory, fantastic. If not, you're playing the probability games and should be at some point. On transfer spend, yeah, without further sponsorships, as in new sponsorships coming in, it's going to be still largely to do with player trading. I think there is probably some capacity to do something opportunistic, maybe in like the 30 to 40 million range, if nothing else, which I think is the reason why is it João Gomez at Wolves has been talked about. But I think the reality is like that's a little bit of a bet on, okay, if we get a midfielder in that's more suited to the formation, the system, whatever, it will then propel us to Europe. United's previous leadership have been, culpable of making that type of decision multiple times in the past. And that's how we've got here. So the prudent part of my brain, like if I put my CFO hat on, I'm like, well, no, we've kind of made the decision that we're going to be playing the probabilities, right? Like, do we need to spend or do we need to take the risk on incremental spending, which ultimately, if it doesn't work out, if the player that we buy gets injured for 6 months and is out for the rest of the season, well, that was a big waste of money because now we've also eaten out of the summer transfer, the summer budget.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. But if you're thinking with a football hat on, you're saying it's really tight between 4th and 10th. Fifth place fifth place might get you into the Champions League. Probably would. 6th will definitely get you into the Europa League, depending on where the FA Cup falls. 7th might even do that as well. Is it worth chasing that dream? Yeah, it's certainly worth chasing that dream if you're talking on pure football terms. Yeah. So, I mean, the perennial debate amongst fans and football directors.
Exactly. It's like that is the line from, I think, not just football directors. I'd probably say 80% of football owners in history.
Mm-hmm.
Like, look, we don't know the right answer. But I think the other thing is the targets that we are reported to be in for, there's not going to be a deal for them in January.
No, I think that's fair enough. Yeah, there won't be. Okay, I wanted to talk about some of the underlying stuff as well that we missed out. United's wages to turnover ratio is at its lowest point since 2020 now, just above 50-something percent. I mean, historically, United have always done that because we have a big turnover revenue. And there's only so much you can spend on wages. But it's at a very low rate. It does set up United really well for potential European competition later or under the new squad cost rule. United are in a good position there, I'd say. And we talked about it last time out. Some of the other underlying numbers, Kieran Maguire calculated that United have now lost under the Glazers more than $500 million in cumulative losses. Nice little headline there. And also well over $1 billion. That is, pick your currency, spent on net interest. The damage these guys have done. They should be in the rogue gallery of owners They're rarely put there because United are still this big club, but yeah, and it's not. We haven't gone to the wall like some clubs have done with rogue owners. It's only because we've had this capacity to borrow money, basically, that has not happened. But $1 billion ripped out of the club under the Glazers now.
Maybe I should do a post on this. It's like the ultimate cash machine has finally run out. Mm-hmm. Like that's effectively what it is. United didn't just used to generate cash; they used to generate free cash flow. So for the people who aren't deep into finance, what that means is free cash flow is the money that you're generating after you've spent on capital expenditures, which in this instance is players. So United used to generate a profit, generate loads of cash, spend it on players, and have some left over. Mm-hmm. There is a select group of clubs that applies to, and United are now no longer part of that club.
No. That's very true, and whatever ranking you want to put United in, we are slipping down the list. Whether it's top line revenues, although that was record for the last full financial year, of course, for certain reasons, it won't be there this year, certainly. Whether it's enterprise value in the Deloitte Money League, which they have a very wide spectrum of goodwill, let's say, in terms of their valuations. But you'd still be looking at that and saying, hey, look, the opportunity, given United's global reach, right? If we could just get good again, the opportunity for sponsorships, media, tours, whatever, is really, really high, right? So, and with this new stadium coming online, and you see what that's done to Real Madrid, will do to Barcelona, the opportunity there is there for United to get right back into that top echelon of super elite clubs that we're no longer in financially. But it, again, comes down to making absolutely the right decisions. There's no leeway for bad decisions anymore, I think. We cannot have another Ten Hag moment that cost us £20 million in cost to get rid of his team and pay out the contracts and hire the new guy. And so far, 200 whatever number it is spending on Amorim after £500 million on Ten Hag. It's got to be right, which is why I imagine, despite Ruben having a 33% win rate in the Premier League, they are being very, very patient with him that no other club in the world would be.
Well, I think the impression that I have got throughout since the new day-to-day management team has come in, they are so sensibly pragmatic. Mm-hmm. That's the thing that actually fills me with some degree of confidence. They're just looking at, it seems to me that they're just making really sane, rational decisions. We've said it before on other podcasts. And look, we as fans, we may not like the fact that they don't always necessarily take the risk, but when you put into context the business side as well as the football side, I kind of get it. And the reality is, if they are doing all of the things that they say they're doing in terms of putting in the right infrastructure, the processes, the alignment between the youth and the first team, which I think no matter what people complain about some of the talent that we've let go, I actually don't think you can really refute that. There clearly wasn't alignment. And so even if we had good players, there was no way for them to really consistently be in the first team. I think bearing all of that in mind, to your point, right? Like, I'm pausing because I'm about to use a phrase which I've kind of tried to steer away not from using because I don't want to get people's expectations too high. But United's financials, if they get this right, are a coiled spring. Mm-hmm. And even if they just beat the market by a little bit, the positive wave that could come from that, I think, would be pretty remarkable. Now, there will always be a question as to, okay, is that is the upturn sustainable? Have we really got it right? Et cetera, et cetera. It's human nature, as soon as things start to turn. But it all depends on, and this is the bit that we can't really answer, is are those fundamentals, are those foundations that are being built and we're told are being built now, are they really being built in place, or is it still piecemeal? I have my doubts as to how complete some of those foundations are, but I do believe that there are some strong foundations being built. It's just you don't see it immediately, unfortunately.
No, I think that's very right. If I put my strategist hat on, I can see the building blocks there. It's very hard to see inside the tent and exactly what's how good that data and recruitment team is. And we've had Kyle McCauley come in. Sansoni's been building out his data team. I can tell you right now, I think I said on previous pods, there's no way that's differentiated. So we're just catching up. It doesn't mean we're better than any other club out there, but it's all part of this let's make rational decisions piece. Are we going to be in a position where we find the next Moises Caicedo for £5 million and he turns into £100 million talent? I would be really surprised, honestly. Maybe we can think we can beat the market, but I'd be really surprised there. But at least have sensible foundations in place, and I do kind of see where the strategy is there. It is so dependent on being good on the pitch, and that is on Ruben. And maybe that's a good segue into talking about some of the January changes in the squad that may or may not happen. I mean, obviously, the big headline that everyone's talking about right now for football and non-football reasons is Kobbie Mainoo and what might happen with him. The Athletic reporting again that he's looking for a loan. I imagine it will be a loan right now. I would not be in the slightest bit shocked if it's a full sale in the summer. I don't see the connection between him and Amorim at all ever in terms of his player profile. We've got a year of evidence right now. He's lost a year of his career. So what would that look like in terms of finances? He's not on particularly big wages. They wouldn't save United much. Would we get a loan fee? Maybe, maybe not. You'd imagine, depending on like how much leverage United have. In normal circumstances, a player of his quality, you absolutely would get a loan fee. It's starting to look like a fire sale, though, isn't it? Given how little he's been used. So, what do we expect there?
I think if he went on loan, we'd probably get a loan fee. Low to mid-single digit loan fee, 3 to 5 million.
Wages covered.
Wages covered. Yeah, so like all in all, you're probably making like 5 to 7 million gain, all in, through the second half of the season. Can he, impact on the financials if he is sold? Well, okay, not much wages, no amortization. Pure profit on the books. PSR isn't a concern. Neither is squad cost rule. So, like, that's all by the by. It would be cash to be able to buy further players. So, the next step is cash to buy further players. So, actually, there'll be quite a big incremental cost to replacing Mainoo, which, in the wider context of squad cost rules that we talked about last time, like, that is that will be a real consideration going forward in terms of like selling youth in order to buy a new player. Like, yeah, okay, you get the 1 year of profit, but actually you're taking on way more costs. So selling Mainoo would be a cash, realistically speaking, a cash decision. Do I want him to go? No. Love him as a player. I even went to see an England game at Wembley to see his debut. But if we're talking about rational decisions, the footballing department, because I don't necessarily think this is just, and it's been painted as an Amorim thing, but clearly, if he was breaking ranks versus what the rest of the footballing department thought, we'd probably be hearing a bit more about that. And maybe less to do with a sale. So, look, I think it's the harsh reality of what rational decision making is in this scenario, right? Like, I've heard some people saying, well, maybe we shouldn't have bought Cunha so you can put Bruno in the 10 and have Kobbie as one of your two central midfielders. Like, I get that sentiment, but I'm not really sure that is the correct answer here.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's very hard with young players to know exactly what their pathway is. So in a completely different football system, he had some standout moments, some standout games as well. Many standout games, I'd say, including for England. And even if you say Ten Hag ball was chaos, including the midfield department, I think his performances at the international level show his quality and his potential quality. It's very hard to develop as a player if you're playing 10 or 15 minutes. This is a finance show. It impacts on his top line value as well. Most certainly, right? And we've probably shaved £20 million off his realistic fee over the last year, maybe more than that. I mean, put it another way, if United were trying to buy a player of his quality, what would we be expected to spend? He was, Mainoo was ahead of Wharton in the pecking order, in the England pecking order 2 years ago. He's probably not now. And Wharton will go for 60 to 80 million pounds. So, and what would Mainoo go now in this current market? 40 to 60 maybe, right? So you've taken a lot off his value. So that is a financial consideration. On the football side, I just don't see a pathway for him at United under Amorim because they will never play more than two central midfielders. He wants a ball progressor in there. We see Amorim ball. It was kind of an irony, I suppose, against the worst team that the Premier League has had in quite some time. You saw Amorim ball at its kind of zenith, the capacity to move the ball quickly forward. And none of these skill sets, the ground coverage and the progressive passing, are really Kobe's forte, right? And so that's why he's not playing. Has he developed? It's really hard to say, right, what's happening in training. I just don't think he's the profile. So when Amorim talks about him, he got very testy in the last, had to go at Carl Anker, didn't he? Yeah. When questioned about this, he's feeling very defensive about it. Amorim is, because he knows he's out of alignment with the club's historic position. He's probably not out of alignment with the football department. And as you say, the rational decision-making, which is why I think what is likely to happen is a sale eventually, because they've got to decide whether they're with Amorim or not. There's no guarantee that Amorim lasts beyond this summer, and it's not just about performances. He'll be into the last year of his contract. He'll be a lame duck manager from July 1st, 2026 onwards. They will have to make a Ten Hag-like decision on whether they give him an extended contract or not. And that will very much depend on where we are this season, I imagine. Thinking rationally and all of that. But so what do we expect? A loan for Kobe this winter? That would leave us very, very short in midfield, and a loan in of some kind that fits an Amorim profile.
Conor Gallagher? It's just a name that pops into my head.
I mean, yeah. I mean, if you want players who are technically not very good and run around a lot, then yeah, he's available because he's not playing for Atletico at the moment.
Well, I think again, try and put the rational hat on from a business perspective. You got a player that used to play in the Premier League, so knows what it's all about, won't be on massive wages, kind of gets what it takes to, what it means to play for United, has a lot of energy, which our midfield sometimes does need, and can lessen the burden on someone like a Casemiro so that you don't get a massive drop off whenever you substitute him. I could, the footballing side, different debate, but I could totally understand why a decision like that might be made. Because the reality is, especially in the last few games, Agate and Mainoo have not had many minutes, which tells you everything you need to know in terms of what they are doing and whether they are meeting the perceived standards that are required. And Bruno might be able to play 90 minutes every week, but Casemiro probably can't, particularly over Christmas. Mm-hmm. And during AFCON, he's, I guess AFCON doesn't really impact our midfield, but, I could see that sort of signing being made.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely can. It makes sense financially. Whether it makes sense footballing-wise, I don't know, but if someone wants to make the argument for me that it's better to have Conor Gallagher at the club than Kobbie Mainoo, I will quite willingly fight them, and I don't think I'm much of a fighter. So there you go. I mean, I'm sure I will see some takes there. There are a whole bunch of people in social media who made the argument that Bruno should be sold last summer, and I suppose you could make a rational argument that if United got 80 million, that would have been 80 million you could spend. But Bruno is top of every single metric you could possibly think of, both attacking and defensive. So if you tell me there's a better midfielder on the planet than Bruno, again, I'd be willing to fight you, and I have the receipts as well. So that would have just been mad. My view, personal view, other people can disagree, but you couldn't replace the numbers for the same amount of money. You'd just be looking at age profile, basically.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And also, you're then putting an incredible amount of pressure on the other signings you are making, right? Because that then means...
To succeed, yeah.
Yeah. That then means the creativity has to come from Cunha and Mbumo, who are getting used to all of their teammates, plus a new striker in terms of Sesko. Like, again, people may not like it, but there's probably a rationale behind it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, United could be a higher trading club like Chelsea. There are risks that come with that, of course. Shipping players in and out. You have to be very good at it. One thing you have to somehow beat the market on that one and not be paying penalty fees in terms of like transfer costs in and out all of the time, and all the bonuses that come with that, and the agents' fees and so on. And it has to knit together as a team. And so if you change 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 players every summer, you certainly have to take the risk that take some time to gel, although it seems to be working for Chelsea right now. Sort of.
Well, I mean, we've got the same points as them, right? In the league.
Yeah, true.
That's with changing. Look, okay, Sesko's been injured recently, but that's changing 4 of the starting 11, basically.
Mm-hmm.
That's, to this point on transition risk. If you're changing the whole of your front line, central midfielder and a goalkeeper, that's nigh on the spine of your team.
All right. Well, to summarise, top lines are roundabout even year over year. A slight operating loss, pre-tax operating loss. Rachel Reeves will be crying into her briefcase that United did not contribute to the black hole in the public finances here. Net debt up to near enough £750 million. The credit card facility has about 80 million on it, and the wage bill is quite significantly down, part of the overall restructuring of the club. So financially, right track, sort of. I think we've said it before. My view is it's a house built on sand. It's potentially a very beautiful house, but the foundations are not that deep yet.
You got to start somewhere with the foundations. Yeah. And if you didn't have any to start with, it takes time.
Absolutely. All right. Well, check out Jamie's analysis on the director's inbox on Substack or Subprime Goals. Are you writing for both now?
I'm turning into a publisher, apparently. Yeah. I am writing on both. The first cut today is on the director's inbox, but you can find that through my page very easily. There will be more, hopefully, interesting content to come. I've got a few pieces in mind on United, but
very good. Well, if you want to look sexy at Christmas parties, roll out Jamie's analysis of United's finances. It will get you the ladies, guys, whatever you're into. Honest. Probably not. Probably not. All right, Jamie, thank you very much. Thanks
a lot, Ed. Till next time.
Yeah, till next time. Listeners, viewers, you can catch us on all the apps. If you're watching, if you're not watching, if you're listening, you can check us out on YouTube. Jamie's the director's inbox at Substack. I'm NQAT Pod at Substack. And our Patreon, if you want the extra show each week, is at patreon.com/NQAT Pod. Bye now.